And now you are at a new news, what do you call it? News organization? What do we call it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Our tagline is "We're the media arm of the movement." So breakthrough news. You can watch us here on YouTube.
You're not publishing any op-eds inviting martial law?
Not as of yet. Although that appears to be the way to get published these days in the Great Ladies. So I mean, unbelievable.
I thought it was so funny how he actually, the guy who published it, apologized. He didn't apologize. He's like, we owe it to our readers to provide diverse views. And especially when held by people who are setting policy. It's like, you just said the quiet part aloud. Like, you're supposed to pretend to have, I guess, some commitment maybe to raising voices. It's like, who will speak for the status quo, incredibly powerful, in this case, straight white man, although it does not always have to be that. But like, who's going to give voice to the totally already voiced?
That is the same shit that Mark Zuckerberg says about the president.
Right.
What do you mean?
Exact same thing that he wants to.
Right.
It's supposedly performing a public function to let us hear from these powerful people with their hands around our necks.
Yeah, right. And my attitude too is, okay, if you're performing a public function, then where's like our public control over what you do? Like for Mark Zuckerberg to even say like his solution, we're going to set up a Facebook Supreme Court of people like picked by me, paid by me, and under my control. But trust me, like that's going to be the transparent thing. Like, cool, you want to perform a public service, then you're a public utility. And maybe you shouldn't even be a private company. When we talk about the role that Facebook, Google, all these institutions play in our lives, I mean, I think it's questionable the like legal status they're allowed to hold, and the sort of fiction that they're just these private corporations, neither here nor there, just making these decisions on the fly. I mean, they're really, in fact, controlling so much of what we see and hear, how it's, categorized and how it's hierarchically presented to us. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like I want to turn that argument back on him, just like how he says he is all about having no privacy, but he bought the 6 homes around him in San Francisco so that no one could know where he lives or ever spy on him or whatever.
And didn't he also like ruin Hawaii or try to ruin some Hawaiian area, some like sacred indigenous place that he was trying to dig up to build a really nice house or something?
I thought that was the Spotify guy, Sean Parker, who had the thing in the Redwood Forest, like the Lord of the Rings themed wedding that apparently like cut down some tree that was like 100. I don't even know the story. But
I don't know that, but I do know that there's a thing. Because how I know that is what's his name? The DSA guy. I'm sorry, I'm blanking on the name. Who ran for Congress in Hawaii.
Daniela Ng.
Yeah.
Can I say one thing here on the subject that Eugene brought up, the Facebook Oversight Board that they supposedly claim legitimacy in, and that grounds their decisions in some kind of independent authority? One of the members of that Oversight Board is a professor at my alma mater at Stanford Law School, and the students there are up in arms because he dropped the N-word in class, refused to apologize for it. Yeah. And there's a whole campaign by Stanford law students in school right now about Michael McConnell, who's on the Facebook Oversight Board, which is to say, even if it had any teeth, which is not clear, its composition is suspect. And I don't think we should be satisfied by that standard at all. Eugene's certainly right insofar as if there are public functions and they're going to claim some utility as a public enterprise or service to the rest of us, there should be public oversight and control, if not ownership.
Yeah. My thing really is that there are 2 issues. One is that it's total BS about providing multiple views and diverse opinions, because I think it was Vanessa B., who writes for Current Affairs, who said, okay, I'm looking forward to the New York Times publishing an op-ed by an Antifa CEO.
Right.
Do that. It's fine. Do that. if you want to have just the freedom to, sure, do it. The thing that bothers me is it pretends to be like neutral and just like letting all sides speak. Yep. And it's not. It's obviously favoring the powerful. Right. And they should have an Antifa person write an op-ed. They should have a person who is a protester who was physically attacked, by the police write an op-ed. How many Palestinians, have they had write an op-ed for them? So again, it's like this. That's the real danger, because I don't know what the solution is. I don't trust Facebook or Twitter to be fact-checking or stuff. So
no, you shouldn't. You absolutely can. It's a real danger. We have a habit sometimes of inviting solutions that are worse than the problem we're trying to fix. Police body cameras are an example of this. Many people thought at one point the body cameras were going to help. I wrote an article in 2015 warning body cameras are a surveillance vector and they don't promise accountability. Cops have gotten away with murdering people in public on camera. George Floyd is only the most recent. Remember Eric Garner?
Yeah, of
right?
course.
There have
Right.
been others. The camera doesn't solve anything. What you need is a law that allows people to hold cops responsible. That's why we have to end qualified immunity.
Right.
You need prosecutors who are willing to do their jobs. That's why we need to elect people like Wesley Bell in St. Louis, like Chase Boudin here in San Francisco. You know,
He got the Katie Halper show bump.
He did. Yeah, that's right.
And then he won. I'm just saying, yeah.
You know, but it takes all these parts, and it's you know, it's the failure of the establishment.
I mean, I've very much heard and I agree with the body cameras are insufficient, but do they not help at all with raising awareness, a sense of outrage? I mean, and I get how you can shut them off and then that makes it look like, you know, but it seems like they have, and I get that it's not enough. You can't have the outrage without the legal policy that has, you know, teeth to it. But are they not, should they be gotten, are you suggesting that they'd be gotten rid of totally, or what's the
big difference between dash cams and body cams? First of all, because dash cams capture context and a body camera doesn't. So you don't get to see what the cop does with a body cam. That's one problem. So it inherently privileges the police perspective. So yes, I think it is worse than nothing. There have been examples of body camera footage that has led to outrage, fewer examples of that footage leading to accountability. And that's the point. Accountability is what we need. At the best, a body camera gives you transparency into an incident. What we need transparency into is patterns and practices. And a body camera doesn't give you any of that, right? We need accountability for patterns of racial profiling. We need an end to the qualified immunity doctrine so that when cops beat someone up, they're subject to the same criminal standards as the rest of us, that they aren't given these benefits from a law that they abuse in the service of hurting people that they're charged to serve and protect, no less. And these are policy changes we can make. Eugene, do you have thoughts here?
Yeah, no, and I appreciate all those points. And I think so much of this and so much of the response that we have to these incidents of policing is, you know, it's so raw in the moment that there's always sort of a jump to like, okay, well, what is the thing we can make the police do to make this end? And I think we lose sight of the fact that ultimately, it's when you put all the pieces together, the whole of policing is basically this, right? The police are there to enforce the law. Well, who makes the laws? And ultimately, when you really start to think about that, then the role of the police itself has to be questioned in a deeper way. I think crime is like, quote unquote, crime is the only issue we deal with like this. Like, I think you would be everyone would hate you if you said, you know what would be great if, like, of all the people who had cancer, we just had like 16% less of people with cancer. No, people are like, no, let's eliminate cancer. But when it comes to this sort of deeper underlying role with policing, we play on the society plays on these primal fears of fear about this very violent society, really the social consequences of the neoliberal devastation of our society. And rather than sort of question, like, what are the root causes of this thing? Like, everything that happens has a reason. Like, even if someone says, well, someone just had a mental health issue, or like what the average person may say, well, that person was quote unquote crazy. Well, like, you know what? That also, there are reasons why people are affected by certain things in certain ways. And if we get to the root, we can start to question of why we even really need the police.
Right.
And I think to a large degree, the police exist because we have so much difference and so much inequality in our society. You know, there's such a need to, to keep the society from totally going off the rails. You basically have to hold the lid on a boiling pot. And I think that's a lot of what policing is. And until we look at some of those deeper rooted causes, we're just never going to get beyond the constant conversation, because it's not really the training. It's not really, I mean, it is these things, and all those things are relevant, but they're only sort of symptomatic of the deeper challenge, which is that the role policing is playing is inherently, discriminatory.
Right. Yeah. I feel like there is a moment, a potential weird nonpartisan or post-partisan something movement around this, because even like hard on people who don't have empathy for quote unquote criminals, who don't have empathy at all, but are just like fiscal conservatives and maybe a little libertarian. I mean, I know there are all these private prison initiatives, but there does seem to be some kind of, drug legalization, decriminalization. I think that the data of how badly this stuff works, like the recidivism rates, that I think there's a way, without ceding the moral ground, there's a potential for a very kind of strategic alignment or something, or just like shifting the narrative. So even people who will not come to where we are politically on most issues see like this isn't tough on crime, and this isn't good financially. Like it's a lot of money and it doesn't make us safer.
I think it's already happened insofar as like the loudest voices you can find to demilitarize police often are libertarian voices. And, you know, they're not necessarily the ones saying Black Lives Matter. Like they're coming at it from a very different perspective. Right. And from that perspective, the thing that's inhibiting transformative criminal justice reform is not the GOP. It's the center. And this is an important point to make. You know, people sometimes think that the GOP is the enemy, and it is certainly for people like us part of it. But the authoritarians are centrists in both parties. And that's a critical point for people to recognize. You know, when we're out in the streets, we can't focus only on Trump. You know, I heard a lot of, you know, expletive Trump. And every time I'd be like under my breath, and Pelosi.
Right.
You know, we can't pretend if we keep sending the same Democrats back to Congress that we're going to have anything different. And it's to recognize these harms as a superstructure that is bipartisan, an establishment that transcends party, I think is a critical part of the current analysis that we have to take into account as we're taking action now to defend our most basic principles.